welcome to the Great Northern Creative Festival 2016. We are here talking about some events that are going on today for day 5 of the event. Today we've got C-Jam going on, but we've also got another event that talks about popular music in Europe, and that's going to be talking about a little bit about the differences of what's going on in Europe. And first, let's look at the highlights of what's going on this week. So there are some events that are going on this week, and it's been lots of fun. And we thank those who are involved and those who aren't involved. It's never too late to be involved. Just as a reminder, this is the hashtag for the event, the Great Northern Creative Festival 16 for 2016. And we've been having lots of fun. It's been a great event to hear professionals talk about careers that we are looking into going into, and just to see what's out there in the industries, and it's been a wonderful event. If those who want to know a little bit more about the event, why it's held, what sort of things going on, you can always talk to Keegan, who is the coordinator for the event, and you could also follow Jam Euclid. And we'd like to go over now to Richard Witts, who will explain a little bit more about the event that's happening today, popular music in the Europe. And Richard Witts is involved with the Vorsprung Deutsch technique, so he's going to be talking to us a little bit about that. We hope you have fun. Thanks for joining.
The cross point, as integration theory would have it, at least as far as my reading of Ben Roosevelt goes, of the local level of language meeting the universalist production of music, and the political dimension crossing that of the cultural. This communion of musical integration and linguistic difference was especially important to Western European institutions, which desired to differentiate their territory from the uniform bloc of Stalinist Eastern Europe on the one side, and on the other, unfettered American free market jungle capitalism, which was encroaching due to the USA's initiative of European economic regeneration across Western Europe through the European Recovery Programme, now known commonly as the Marshall Plan. In the domain of low politics, There were two principal reasons for the song contest, as far as I can see. The first came from pressure by the music industry, especially the music publishers, to provide a supranational platform for popular music. Television and music did not in those days have a working vocabulary. And the second, to provide a means to develop and test engineering procedures for larger and more complex technical events across the Union, such as sporting fixtures. They didn't really care what was in the content of it. They were using it to develop technology, supranational technology. Let's see a Eurovision entry. I showed you the winner of the first contest in 1956. We're now nearly a decade later, 1965, and here, to return to the theme of this paper, is the Swedish entry. It's very unusual. It's by a classical Swedish composer, Dag Vereen, and it's sung by an internationally known opera baritone, Ingvar Witts. I'm going to play the whole song because I think it's very beautiful. Notice something about the words? English. A revolution has started at Eurovision. The music publishers had determined that the need to enlarge the market for the Eurovision songs was necessary. It was therefore ruled that a country's entry should be sung in a recognized language of that country. The producers claimed that English was Sweden's second language. The Eurovision contest altered and adapted rules regularly, often to tweak the voting procedures in a sincere bid to enlarge the democracy of the enterprise. I mean, so much so I'm surprised that Jürgen Habermas hasn't written a polemic about it. But aside from the language, you will have noticed the orchestra, and perhaps the feeling that nothing stylistic had changed in a decade. The orchestra to the side, the singer frozen for a camera spot. However, that song didn't win. What won in 1965 was this one from Luxembourg. I'm sorry about the disjunct there between the sound and the picture. It was written by Serge Gainsbourg, and it was the first time a song won that wasn't a ballad. And it brought youth back into the frame. I think France Gall was 15 or something like that. By the way, Gainsbourg's melody was based on the theme from Beethoven's Piano Sonata, Opus 2, number 1. He was clever at making these little digs like that. Meanwhile, what Sweden did for language in 1965 was repeated famously by that country almost a decade later in 1974. The most famous moment in Eurovision history, when Sweden won with this song in English, giving Eurovision its first prize-winning global success.
It's Napoleon. Napoleon, no wonder the song is called Waterloo. This is Sven Olaf Waldorf, who's really entered into the spirit of it all, dressed as Napoleon, waiting for Waterloo by ABBA for Sweden. Watch this one.
You don't need any more, you know it all too well already, I'm sure. Yes, incidentally, the running across the set of Frida and Agnetha came about because they had missed their cue to be in position for the cameras. They were meant to be stuck in firm position. But it came across as an innovation. Singers moving, as did, of course, the energy of that song. But you may feel now that I'm straying off my point. I'm using Sweden, where this year's song contest was held. Sweden having won the event again in 2015. I'm using Sweden as an exemplar of a European country where popular music is taken seriously, as Max Martin said. So seriously that its composers can be seen to contribute in unparalleled force to a range of genres that define the mainstream, from Eurovision to Justin Bieber. But if the mainstream is exemplified in Europe, then Europe has also defined the radical edge of popular music. And to delineate this, we only need to move 1 year on from the debut of ABBA's Waterloo and 1 ferry ride from Sweden to Germany. I am proposing Kraftwerk to epitomize the nonchalant, abstract, stylish, disciplined, keyboard-led music at the sharp end. And I want to emphasize their relationship to Germany, the relationship to Germany of their music, their lyrics, imagery and style, in a context where the orchestra has been replaced by the synthesizer and the fixed spot of the singer by a robot. I want here to thank John Hawkins of the post-punk band Activity Minimal. He told me recently what he saw when he attended the first appearance of Kraftwerk in Liverpool on the 11th of September 1975. In that month, the 4 members of Kraftwerk carried out their debut British tour. They went gefahren, fahren, fahren up and down the M1 and the A38 to 17 venues of varied suitability, from Croydon to Yeovil and places all around, including Southport. In Liverpool, they played at the spacious Empire Theatre, which seats an audience of 2,400. John Hawkins told me that there must have been less than a tenth of that there, around 200 fans of what was then called krautrock. John said that they were expecting a typical krautrock hippie band of the kind they'd seen on tour from Germany. After all, Kraftwerk's Autobahn lasts a very hippie 23 minutes. But the audience was shocked to see a quartet with neat hair and matching business suits, just like the Beatles have been in 1963. In retrospect, Hawkins thought that there was something almost punkish about their look. In those days, Kraftwerk laboured with a mixture of unwieldy and homemade instruments, and so there were rather long pauses between numbers while they rejigged the equipment. At one point, to cover the silence, the singer Ralph turned to the audience, and to try and talk to them. He asked, "Well, we know a little English. Do you know any German?" Did Scousers know any German? Well, of course they did. "Achtung, ein Spitfire," somebody shouted. "Bill Shankly, über alles," somebody else yelled. And you got, of course, the inevitable, "For you Engländer, the war ist over." What did Kraftwerk expect in a city blitzed by the Luftwaffe when in 1941 around 4,000 civilians were killed in 80 bombing raids? In any case, the war is never over, is it? Not over here. Just 1 month after Kraftwerk's tour, in October 1975, the BBC broadcast an episode of Fawlty Towers titled "The Germans," which satirised the supposed integration brought by Britain's entry to the common market 2 years earlier.
Don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it all right. So, it's all forgotten now, and let's hear no more about it. So that's 2 egg mayonnaise, a prawn Goebbels, a Hermann Göring, and 4 cold sandwiches. Oh, wait a minute, I got a bit confused here. Sorry, I got a bit confused because everyone keeps mentioning the war, so could you...
In 1999, Germany's culture minister, Michael Naumann, criticised Britain for being, quote, the one nation in the world that has decided to make the Second World War a sort of spiritual core of its national self, understanding and pride. Just to remind you, that's terrible, isn't it? That's better. However, Kraftwerk cannot claim to be quite so disconnected from the dark past of the Third Reich. Around 1975, it made several sly references to the National Socialist era of the 1930s, when Kraftwerk made their own video for the epic track, Trans-Europe Express. The futuristic model train we seem to see them sitting in was in fact a replica of a real one called the Schienen Zeppelin. That train was developed by the Nazis using a BMW engine that was later employed to power the Luftwaffe's light bombers. A Trans-European Express was itself a former Trans-European Express was itself a former Nazi concept, a product of the state's desire to functionally connect its growing empire. In the song, Ralph talks of travelling from Paris to Vienna, two of the chief annexed cities. Similarly, on the cover of Radioactive of 1975, the radio depicted is called a Volksempfänger DKE-38, a shortwave radio issued by the Nazis and known sarcastically as Goebbels' Schnauzer, the snout of the propaganda minister. There's also the cover of Autobahn, the original cover of Autobahn of 1974 to consider. The Autobahn itself is a National Socialist innovation, where the bourgeois Mercedes passes a working-class Volkswagen, the people's car, first put into production in 1937, following Hitler's order for a vehicle that could transport 2 adults and 3 children at 100 kilometers an hour. This intriguing scene is composed in the manner of the approved Nazi style of genre painting, that is, idealistic yet realistically drawn images promoting Heimat, love of homeland. This image could have come from Germany in the 1970s or the 1930s. Why is Kraftwerk doing this? Why is it teasing us with these references to Nazi technology? The Autobahn cover is painted by Emil Schult, an artist on the Dusseldorf scene, out of which Kraftwerk also sprang. Schult played guitar with Kraftwerk in 1973, and he went on, more importantly, to finesse their aesthetic outlook and help shape them into the corporate men machines by which they gained global success. Kraftwerk has only rarely been two musicians. There is the singer and keyboard player Ralf Hütter and the flautist Florian Schneider-Esleben. The other 2 people have been employed by Ralf and Florian. Now this claim might seem unjust to the others who have made distinct creative contributions, but it's a fact. Schult, Hutter and Schneider-Esleben were part of a greater critical cultural movement in West Germany. This faction was unhappy with the way that post-war Germans pretended that there was a big gap between 1933 and 1945, and that 1945 was itself what they called Stunde Null, year zero, as if Hitler and his swastika had never happened. It was left to radical authors, filmmakers, and other artists to confront this hypocrisy. Hutter once claimed that, quote, "We have no fathers," a comment which echoes a general complaint at the time about the refusal of parents to discuss the war. But the phrase, as used by Ralph, is ironic, because Florian Schneider-Esleben's father was rather well known. He was the architect of the glass and concrete Mannesmann, now Vodafone, Tower of 1958 by the River Rhine in Düsseldorf. Paul Schneider-Esleben's buildings include the Cologne Bonn Airport. They are pure modernist Stunde Null style buildings based on principles formed at the Bauhaus in the early 1930s under Mies van der Rohe, before Hitler closed the Bauhaus down. In contrast, Emil Schult had been a student at the Düsseldorf Academy of Art in the late 1960s, where three great artists taught, each of them grappling with the Nazi past and making it visible. There was Joseph Beuys, who called himself an idiot under a felt hat. Beuys stimulated debate with his enigmatic performances that often made references to his wartime past as a young fighter pilot. Then there was Gerhard Richter, whose Uncle Rudy, in a Nazi uniform, he provocatively depicted like a blurred snap. Richter integrated the figurative and the abstract, just as Kraftwerk were to do in 1975 with their album Radioactivity. I'm told that Emil Schult had been a student of both Beuys and Richter. Lastly, there was Anselm Kiefer. Using lead, gold, ash and straw, he made an architectural subjects copied from the Third Reich. Here's his painting portraying a superhuman wood-beamed hall burnished by torch flame. It's called Germany's Spiritual Heroes, Geisteshelden. In 1969, Kiefer stood in places conquered by the Third Reich and made Nazi salutes. The image is absurd, a little man dwarfed by bleak landscapes. Yes, yet this was an aggressive gesture in a society where artistic representation of Nazism was legally banned. A little later, Kraftwerk took the shiny, new, everyday objects of the Third Reich, its cars, motorways, trains, rails and radios, and like Kiefer presented them in an ironic utopian glow. Much of this was missed in England because of the subtlety of what Kraftwerk did, together with our ignorance of Germany, despite our negative fixation with it. But I suspect that there was a further influence in the formation of the men-machine Kraftwerk, and this stimulus came from England. Gilbert and George are two artists who turned themselves into living sculptures. Encouraged by Joseph Beuys, they visited Düsseldorf's Kunsthalle in 1970 and followed that up with appearances in the city every 2 years. Dressed in smart suits, Gilbert and George displayed impeccable manners while at the same time giving rise to discomfort. These living sculptures were described by a German critic as, quote, rigid and hollow men, devoid of personality, the imitation of mechanical forms and processes are recurrent motifs.
Bend, just a little more and I'll shoot, baby. I'm so insecure that you can make me feel that I have shown I got a sickness. Only you can go so much straight up. There's no sound like please, oh please, man, try to please me.
You can see see them around London, you know, in Gilbert and George, around Spitalfields, almost every day, in their immaculate suits. I believe the presence of Gilbert and George in Dusseldorf played a part in the artistic revolution of Ralph and Florian under the impact of Schultz. This change is reflected in the music too. It fascinates me how Kraftwerk have moved from this in 1970 to this in 1977. I see the move as part of a general trend from the 1960s onwards. The earnest technology of modernism was used to serve instead the nimble games of postmodernism. To my mind, this helps to explain Kraftwerk's very name, power station. Ralph and Florian used it in a period when the hippies of the alternative scene backed a grassroots movement against nuclear power. I see Kraftwerk as part of that critique which poked fun at the Green movement's regressive nostalgia for a pastoral idyll to which the Nazis were also prone. They refer directly to nuclear power stations when they pile one over another of radio news items about stations in the album Radioactivity of 1975. I'll play you just the... It's meant to sound like that. Okay, I'm going to play it now with the translation. You get the idea. You see how much we miss the meaning in Kraftwerk. But I'm especially interested in the musical material itself that Kraftwerk has provided. And I've noticed that there were musical links, connections and developments between what I call the forgotten first 4 albums that Ralph and Florian made between 1969 and 73, and the familiar 5 albums from Autobahn, it says the first 4 and then the famous 5. From Autobahn to Computer World. But there are these links that I'll dwell on for a moment. The first example concerns a piling up and interlocking of notes that are what we call in music theory the interval or distance of a fourth. Here we hear it in Florian's piled up flutes, a flute of all things, from Ruckzuck of 1970. 3 years later. And now it is at its most famous. Now I've got loads I can show you of these, and we go. Here's another one. This is what I call footsteps. They appear in Mitternacht of 1974. And then the opening of radioactivity. And then, most famously, the Hall of Mirrors. So, Kraftwerk's musical world and technique didn't start with Autobahn. Over 5 years, Ralph and Florian developed an aesthetic profile that slowly found its musical focus, though it eventually dissolved. In Britain, Kraftwerk's reputation grew with the evangelistic help of other artists. David Bowie had the Autobahn disc played to audiences at his concert. Joy Division's Ian Curtis insisted on playing Trans-Europe Express to his audiences before they came on stage, and so forth. Did Kraftwerk have an effect on Eurovision? Yes, it did. That's enough of that. That didn't win, strangely. Did it have an effect on America? Yes, but to do so they had to add guitars. Did it have an effect in Germany? Yes. And can we say that this discipline and electronic simplicity and that dilettantism can be found in a new generation? Yes, and I would put Christine and the Queens forward as the living embodiment in French of style, simplicity, nonchalance, discipline, and the electric keyboard.
Ça ne tient
flattering backing there, the orchestra backing, synthesized, but orchestra. Anyway, I will end as Kraftwerk robots do. Ja, twoi sluga, ja, twoi rabotnik. I'm your slave, I'm your worker. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Witts, for that insightful evolution on Eurovision. It was very educational, interesting, and inspiring. It's wonderful to see how music is influenced in all parts of Europe. We sometimes don't think about that. So now we would like to go to the interview with our coordinator, Alan Keane.
Thank you, Chelsea. So Alan, tell us a bit about the Great Northern Creative Festival.
Well, I think the ideas behind the Great Northern Creative Festival started sort of 3 or 4 years ago, where we met with the Executive Dean, and it was always going to be a 5-year plan or a 5-festival plan, where we wanted a creative festival, you know, and I think we put the ideas down to him, and in particular where we started off small and secure, but we wanted it to grow into a bigger and more diverse festival.
How can students of UCLan get involved with the festival?
Well, I think the festival's always been about the students, and that was part of the original plan of action, where we wanted to sort of get the students involved in the festival, both with their work, but we also wanted to get the industry coming into the festival to enjoy sort of the events that we were putting on, whether it was an event with photographers or Shakespeare in the North, or, you know, a John Glenn James Bond director. It was all about that engagement in different ways. So there's lots of opportunities for the student, and it always was fundamentally for and all about the students.
Why does it benefit the students at UCLan?
I think, again, we always wanted it to benefit the students first and foremost, because particularly from the creative industry's point of view, it's about engagement, it's about networking, it's about meeting people in the industry. And as we look at the 3 festivals that we've had up to now, they have got bigger, they have got better, they've got more diverse. So we have a selection of events that cater for a cross-section of students, and they can get involved at whatever level they want. So they can get involved either just going to an event, or they can get involved by screening their work, or they can get involved on the practical side of helping out with the actual coordination of the festival. So it ticks a lot of boxes, and there's a lot of cross collaboration.
Is it only students at the University of Central Lancashire that can get involved with the festival?
Well, as part of the plan of action that I've been talking about, it was always our idea that we would open it up to exterior colleges or universities or partners, and that's going to be the plan for the next festival, because we're very much looking at the remit of the university and the college where there is public engagement. So we're going to open it up to, say, sixth form colleges, where we run competitions for the best film, the best band. There's going to be a number of competitions where they can win a week in our recording studio, they can cut a record, we're going to release it on the UCLan label, we'll sell it through iTunes, we're going to have the best film competition where the students can download the work, send it to us, and that plan of action is already taking place for next year's festival, so we're going to promote that in the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks. So very much so with engagement from students outside of UCLan, and that's very much a plan of the action.
How can the students or people get involved with the festival then? Do they just contact you?
Yeah, I'm always pleased for people to contact me in whatever way they can. You know, we've got a blog that's running for 12 months of the year, so there's always access via that. There's good old-fashioned email, details are in the programme, and we're always looking for, you know, students to engage, to get involved and be part of the festival, because it's very exciting. And it also creates a lot of opportunities, and also they meet a lot of people. The networking opportunities are fantastic. So, you know, somewhere along the line, there is something for everyone.
Thank you very much. There you have it. Alan Keegan's giving you his insight of the Great Northern Festival. Just check the links below to find out more information about it.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to a great year next year, and this has been this year, and we hope you've all enjoyed it and have been able to reflect a little bit more about why we have this festival and see what you can do to be involved. It's never too late to continue to be involved. Our hashtag will always be on for this year, And for next year, if you'd like to keep to get up to date for next year, there's a link below, and we'll be having a 12-month blog that will be going on and updating those things on what's going to happen next year. And don't forget to also follow us on JamUClan, at JamUClan on Twitter. And we just hope that you've all been able to really enjoy and have some fun. Also, because that's important too, as well as learning. I'm Chelsea Craven, and this has been day 5 of the Great Northern Festival, and we hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for listening.